Go ahead and call this meeting to order on November 21st, 2017. It is 3:31. This is the second meeting of the Recreation Review Task Force. Appreciate everybody being here. Remember our housekeeping, there is a lot of wires and stuff running underneath us, so don't be crawling under there during the meeting. Just be cautious on putting your feet out and everything under there. So appreciate everybody being here. Again, we have Ms. Terry Swain from Fairplay Oakaway area, Mayor Brian Ramey, Herb Poole from Westminster, Mr. Phil Shirley from Coney County PRT, Mike Crenshaw and Officer Mulwee from the Sheriff's Department, Mr. David Poulson from Salem, and Mr. John Galbraith from Walhalla. And we had a few that were unable to be with us today. First thing we'll do, just approval of minutes for October the 21st. And I'll just kind of review these real quick so we can kind of keep up. I know everybody got these by email, and this committee will actually approve the minutes that we state on here. And we just had that the first meeting we talked about the mission of the Recreation Task Force, and we had presentations from Westminster, Seneca, Walhalla, Salem, and Fairplay Oakaway area. Also had a presentation from the Sheriff's Office, and Mr. Mulder had asked about submitting numbers so we can actually get an understanding of truly where we are in recreation from a budget standpoint throughout the cities and from a county standpoint. Mr. Phil Shirley did a little talk on the PRT area, and Mr. Brent Taylor from Walhalla City Administrator talked about his committee, about his things in recreation. Had a presentation, a little quick presentation from Miss Janet Hartman, and we scheduled the next meeting for Tuesday, November 21st at 2017. Get a motion to approve.
I make a motion.
All right, motion by Mayor Brian Ramey. Second by Mike Crenshaw. Any discussion or changes? All.
We don't use Coney Christian Academy Gym. We use Coney Academy Gym.
Okay. Miss Smith, did you note that on the minutes on there where it says uses Oconee Christian Academy under the Walhalla side? It'd be Oconee Academy Gym.
And we're not offering baseball, and we're using Fairplay Elementary
Okay.
this year.
And you're using what?
Fairplay Elementary, Fair Oak Elementary.
Okay. All right. That second note change was from Miss Terry Swain on there, taking to remove baseball from the offerings of the Fairplay Oakaway area. Under the Fairplay Oakaway, on the back where it says offers baseball, removal of baseball on that. All right. Get a motion to approve as amended.
I make a motion.
Okay. Get a second? Okay. A second by David Paulson. Any other discussion besides that? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you. The first item of discussion is the city recreation data form. I know some of you have sent that in, and I think Mr. Mulder had been in touch with y'all on that. We weren't going to go over the discussion of that because we were still getting some more numbers on. Did anybody have any other questions regarding the data form that was sent in? And just remember to state your name before you speak for minute notation. Or was everybody still working on those budget numbers? Everybody pretty good with everything? If y'all have any questions regarding that or anything, we're trying to get, I think, a 5-year plan is what he had sent out to kind of show. Some of us don't have budgets going back to 5 years if it's within the last 1 or 2, and a future budget just kind of works out from there. So, one of the things I want to discuss on the budget is the whole goal of this is to paint a clear picture of what recreation is costing each of the cities and the county standpoint on there. There's not a true understanding from a council perspective of what y'all pay on there, what part of it is your city residents and what part of it is is the county residents, and what the true impact of recreation is in here. And that's the biggest goal that we have moving forward, which is why the budget needs and everything on there. Because the biggest thing that we want to see to continue to grow is recreation, because the impact it does for our cities. As we go to the next thing, what I wanted to give is everybody an opportunity to go around the table and talk about recreation and the tourism, and what it means. It's not just about kids playing baseball or softball or volleyball or whatever like that, but recreation puts people in your cities. Sometimes it's the number one thing that you actually have that draws. Sometimes it's the only thing that you have to draw into the city. So, you know, I just wanted to give a quick overview on other offerings that you have, and it doesn't necessarily have to be around recreation, but you know, what draws people into your areas. And we'll start with Miss Terry Swain and Mr. Derek Burdette from Fair Play Oakway to talk about, from a recreation standpoint, what draws people into that area and keeps them in that area.
I think for us, it's mostly just convenience of where they live. Because Fair Play's really not, you know, it's not much of a city. It's not like we're drawing people in because of a location or anything. It's more convenience of where they live. It's closer for them when they're getting off work and taking their kids. So for us, it's nothing other than that, I think, when it comes to recreation.
Okay. Mayor Ramey?
Are you wanting something besides recreation or just the recreation?
It can just be, it can be an overview of, you know, based on recreation and the tourism that it brings into your city and the benefits that you have from it.
Well, as you all know, in Westminster, in 83, 84, we lost the high school, which was an abundance of people throughout the city every evening, every day. We lost Beacon Manufacturing, we lost Jansen, Dunlop, Sawmill shuts down. The only thing we have now that will get any of you to come to Westminster is your kids in a ballgame. There's no other reason any of you will come to Westminster. You'll go through it on the way to the mountains. And other than that, that's all we have. The other cities, other areas besides Fair Play and Salem, I mean, they've got something to bring people to town, reasons for people coming to the town. We have nothing really, other than the music center, what entertainment we can offer. When we have events, we draw tourists. When people from Seneca and Walhalla show up for the Apple Festival, Mayberry Days, things like that. But for a consistent group of people coming in, and Herb can tell you about how many games we have at night for basketball games, how many games we have, people we have for basketball games and baseball games. Other than that, we have Chow-Ram Park, which is just outside of town. That brings a lot of people in during the summer when it's open. When it's closed during the winter, we don't get that traffic. So other than that, it's either come to Westminster and come to a ball game, or drive through Westminster. Our restaurants depend on it, gas stations depend on it, all the support businesses throughout town depend on it. Herb, you want to add something?
I think the biggest crowd that we do get, that we do have in Westminster, are for school sporting events, or school events in general. It could be band, things like that. Church and recreation. Those are the main three things that most people come see. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted a volleyball district tournament in our gym, and that's the most people that's been in our gym that I can remember for any basketball game or anything. It was a big crowd we had. And I just recently, this past weekend, went to Pickens. They hosted the state this year, and 2 of our teams went down there, and it's a tremendous amount of people. And I did the thing that all those people are doing. They're going to watch someone play, then they're going to grab something to eat, and then they're coming back. And I think that's a benefit.
And the proof of that, come to Westminster any evening and, go in any of the restaurants, I mean, you're gonna see kids in uniforms with their parents, I mean, that proves it.
I ate at Subway last night.
Yes, there you go.
Were you at a ball game?
I was at the ball game. I was at the volleyball game too with our
West End
all-stars.
Metals.
So we brought a lot too.
Yeah.
So,
David?
But I know that in Salem, we're even farther behind the eight ball because we don't have a complex in town limits. All of our stuff is usually done at the DAR, which is in Tomasi. And like the mayor said, that does bring people to the area, and then once they realize that Salem is so close to Cassie, Lake Kiwi, they want to come back. But to bring somebody to Main Street Salem is a challenge at times. Other than all of us being in the same boat, it brings people to the area, but I don't know about everybody, we've actually seen a big decline in our attendance and our sign-ups and stuff like that for rec, so it is a very important thing to bringing people, but when you don't have anything in town limits, it really aspect.
Right.
John?
John Galbraith, Walhalla. Basically the same thing as Westminster was saying. Our main tourist attraction for Walhalla is the recreation. Any given night, we got 4 basketball games, 8 teams playing tonight. Same way. Coming up basketball season, parking will be a big issue because there'll be so many people around the Civic Auditorium and the gym. Nice problem to have because, like I said, when they leave, they stop and get gas, they stop and eat, drink. They may run by the grocery store in Weston, you never know. On a consistent basis, the recreation departments bring that into the cities. Given night, even in baseball and softball, play 5 fields, 2 games a night. Participants, so what, 10 to 15 players a team, or 12 to 15, I'm sorry. Parents, grandparents. Gotten to the point now where we open up the other side of Sertoma on the disc golf course for parking. About the 3rd year I took over, we had people parking up in the subdivisions at Sertoma because there wasn't any parking to park down there close. They had to park up through the subdivision like you'd see during Oktoberfest. A lot of people. Have 32 basketball teams this year. Usually about softball teams and football, soccer, and cheerleading, about that many in the fall, so brings a lot of people into the town where they spend the money. I hosted a district softball tournament, it's been about 4 years ago, I think. Calculation by the hospitality tax, this was a tournament from Saturday to Thursday, and it brought $200,000 worth of business into the city of Walhalla. That's not tax, but that's revenue the city, the people made for that tournament. I had actually had people, restaurant owners asking me when was the next tournament we was gonna host like that was, because they were packed every day. One of those things where, you take $200,000 worth of business out of Walhalla, that's a lot of money. Thing we don't need to do is lose that business for the cities. And if we can expand it, so it's a bigger facility. We do have the Oktoberfest, Mayfest, Civic Auditorium. It can still be the main steady flow of people coming through town.
Thank you. The biggest thing that I hear on there, and I've known it for a long time, is, recreation is your main attraction. to continually get people into your city. And it's, you know, a lot of it is local, from Seneca coming to Westminster, Westminster to Seneca, Walhalla. All of it is a mixture into there. A lot of times these people don't have to step foot in there but because it's just, you know, you come to Walhalla, you do business in here and you turn around and leave. What I found out through a lot of times, just like what Mayor Ramey was talking about, people always eat before or after games, through all the little events that they do at the end of it. So it is a big tourism booster for each of our cities and continues to be that. And, you know, oftentimes with some of these kids, it's the only time that they get to, you know, be outside in there. And then they, you know, these little team dinners and stuff that they do means the world to a lot of them on there. So, which is why we kind of come into that budget. I was speaking with Mr. Galbraith earlier, talking about, you know, when your teams win the district and then they travel, you know, I think you said you had 3 teams going to Orangeburg on there, which is a great time and exciting time, but it's also a challenging time for your budgets, because it definitely, as happy as you are to get it, unfortunately, it's a, you know, he was estimating about a $5,000 expense per team per night.
5,000 for all 3.
For all 3, okay, so 5,000 for all 3, so, you know, for all 3 on there. So when you have that happen,
Bill was gonna ask where they were staying.
Yeah.
I was about to say, where are you staying at?
yeah. We got the Ritz-Carlton. You win big, everybody go to Walhalla, you get to stay at Ritz-Carlton for the, you know, it's the one in Orangeburg. So, but, you know, it's a, you know, the other thing is the possibility of trying to host something like that in state tournaments. I remember as a kid, there were several, you know, baseball things hosted here, and in recent times there has been. I know it changes a little bit on, you know, it changes a little bit on where they can and about your fields and who has the right field lengths and everything like that. So, and we'll go over some goals in the next meeting that'll be around, you know, some plannings and everything. But I'm gonna go ahead and let Mr. Shirley discuss a little bit on the PRT and the tourism impact and what it means for the area for that, not only through recreation but other avenues of tourism.
Well, Mr. Davis asked me just to give a brief overview, and if you can see a monitor, I've got some slides, and I'm gonna go through them quick, just to share a little about what we do internally. Most of you know, we're not programmatic in terms of like you, what you do. We're 4-phase. We manage the county parks, handle resource management, tourism, product development. We manage the 3 county parks, High Falls and South Cove. I will tell you that the county parks have been on a major climb the last 3 years. You can look at the numbers of camping nights as well as the park revenue. That was an operational business change that we did in 2014. Make ourselves marketable through the internet. We were first come, first served, but now we're just like a hotel. You can go online and reserve. So you can see we've done 4,500 more nights, $160,000 more dollars this year than just 2 years ago. Total camping revenue, I think about $20, $25, $30 a night. A lot of camping nights. You know, a big uptick in our numbers, resource management wise. On Lake Kiwi, we manage the South Cove and the High Falls Landing. Lake Hartwell, 11 landings that we manage, the ones that are underlined. Responsible for the tourism piece for the county. We all know, tourism means something different to all of us. You, as a city, if somebody comes into your city, that's a tourist. For me, if somebody comes into the county, that's a tourist. So the definition of a tourist is different around this table for all of us. Certainly, we want to try to increase the impact of how many people we can bring in, whether it's county parks, campgrounds, your recreation amenities, tournaments, things of that nature. We do a lot of marketing for the county, all the way from visitors guides. The picture on the left is the State Visitors Guide 2015. It's the first time Oconee ever been on the cover. So internationally, and we had that waterfall posted, and even the top right doing trade shows. That is the Southern Women's Show. All of us can sit here and say we know that women make 90% of the travel decisions. The other 10% of the men are lying. I'll tell you that right now. So we put ourselves in front of those folks to showcase Oconee County and give them a reason to come and visit. We have world-class resources all over our county. That's not something new. Everybody's well aware of all the resources that we have. And there is a demand for tourism. When we started marketing and promoting ourselves as a destination, as an entity that could host certain things, we began to get a lot of traction. A lot of different things. You see a lot of different things on there of things that we can host. Not to cut it short, but our heritage and cultural tourism. And we've got 6 museums that focus on 6 different things around the county. Veterans to, niche markets to general store. So we have a number of different things that we can focus on. And we also have the quilt trail. You'd be surprised how many people call or come by and ask about information of the quilt trail. There's 200 quilts around the county that are put up. That's okay, you keep going. What does tourism mean for us in Oconee? We have about 615,000 visitors that come through the county every year. This is all U.S. Travel Association data that's compiled every year. The state pays for the study, and then we all get to share. Each county gets to share the data. $61 million was spent by tourists that visited Oconee County in 2016, with 470 jobs that supported that. This is the last 12 years. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but you can see it starts in 05 and goes to 16. And the key point, if you look at the graph on the right, you can see the recession very clear in 2009. You see where it drops for a year and then it picks right back up. But you look at that steady climb that we've been on since 2005 from tourism data, there's an additional $17 million a year coming into the county every year by our visitors than just 10 years ago. So, we know that what we're doing is successful, what we're doing is working, and recreation and the ability to draw sports tourism will increase that even more as we move forward. Another piece of data that we utilize, the yellow sections, this is the taxes generated by the visitors who come to Oconee County. This is not, this tax is generated not by our citizens, and because of that, all of our households pay about $212 less in taxes every year than if we didn't have tourists coming to our county. So, and that number grows. When we first started keeping this data, it was about $158. So we've seen that number grow, $50, $60 over the last 6, 7 years. The more tourists that come into town, the more taxes they pay. It helps us as visitors, as citizens, taxes that we pay. Another piece of data that we utilize as a base point is the local accommodations tax revenue. Last 6 years, it's up 88%. Now, a couple of reasons for that. One, the Hampton Inn was added. It pays about $30,000 a month in accommodations tax. But what you're seeing is about $150,000, $160,000 increase. We've had a large number of vacation rentals around the lake that we have started going after to make sure they're paying their share of accommodations taxes. It is a true business, and if you know how big the lakes are and how many vacation rentals we are, I could have one person and that be their sole job, and it would be a full-time job keeping up with making sure that money comes in. That uptick is because of those 2 main reasons on the local accommodations tax. Another piece of interesting data, the lodging distribution for the county. Prior to the Hampton Inn, it was about, the hotels and the campgrounds were within about 3% of each other. So the Hampton Inn did kind of have an uptick, and talk to the other hotel owners, they'll tell you that while they might have been against that originally, it has been good for their business. It has provided another piece of lodging for Oconee County, and the competition is growing. And that's good. And we all know that we have several other pieces of lodging on the way. Sports tourism. We are limited in what we can go after. And we've had, I've had conversations with several of you about if we built it, they would come. And that's kind of where we're talking about here is when we get to that point of sports tourism, what is it that we want to accommodate. We want to be able to increase what you guys offer in your cities, but in the back of our mind, when we build something, can we build it also to think about on those weekends when it's not being used, can we bring in those tournaments to talk about the extra $200,000 that comes into your cities? We do focus on a good bit of that. This is an example. This is the Cedar tournament that we're hosting this coming March. This is the economic impact report for that. This is a one-day tournament with 2 days of practice. 161,000, just very similar to what John was talking about. These are all fishermen, their rigs, their boats, their trucks, $75, $80, $100,000 piece of equipment that comes into town. They've got money to spend. They've got additional income to share. This is a 2-day fishing tournament that we hosted last year. It's a regional VFL tournament. Back to $420,000. Now our investment into those, the first one, total investment was $5,000. We paid them $5,000, and they're depositing $160,000 in their account. This particular one, we paid $15,000 for, and they deposited about $400,000 in the economy. So the return is there if we have the things that we could offer. This is our Road Titans. I don't know if you can see that real well, but that's how many different people from different states, the cyclists that come, and you got multiple states as well as multiple countries represented for that particular race. Our investment in that was about $20,000, and you can see the economic impact's about $115,000. That return is not near like what fishing is, and we're evaluating that now to see if we continue with that, or do we look at another direction to get something that's going to be a little bit more of a impact. While all those things are great and good, we do have our challenges, just like you guys do. Balance, how do we balance keeping our natural resources natural and protecting them at the same time promoting them? Something we talk about on a regular basis. We've got a list of questions that we ask every time we talk about wanting to bring something in. Our growth, we're a victim of our own success. We're busting at the seams. Talking about expanding our parks because we're so full, we're turning people away on a regular basis. If you try to come to a county park in the summer, if you don't get there before 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, we're probably going to turn you away and try to send you to another place to recreate. So we're trying to accommodate those things and plan to where that's not something that we do. Adequate access as well as aging infrastructure are a major challenge for us. A lot of our recreational infrastructure was built when the lakes were built, and so it's 40 and 50 years old. And when you have thousands of people using it every year, it's really, really quick. And unfortunately, our history, our track record, has been we don't replace it until it breaks. We don't plan. We don't make recreation a priority. And when something breaks is when we address it. The new office that we have at South Cove, they haven't fell in with what we got to do. So while everybody was crackling and it fell in my head, I'm like, yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait to show somebody. So as part, and Janet's on this commission, but to try and address a lot of these challenges, we put together Destination Oklahoma, and there's a couple of key recommendations in there that talk about looking at a condition assessment of all of our assets, of all the recreation points, and making a plan on how to address those. And just look at the list and imagine in your mind, and we've got some dollar figures that go with it, I'm not going to share it today, but you look at this list and look at the number of places that these things need to be done and how expensive these things are, and you think, how in the world will we ever be able to tackle these things? So there is a major need just in backlog maintenance, trying to keep up with the amount of people we have coming into town to be able to have assets to recreate with. And then when you talk about the product development, things that, most of these are county initiated. You got Palmetto Trail and Stump House that Walhalla's working on specifically. These are things that are either on our radar, on our wish list, on the Destination Oklahoma plan, or things that need to be done. And you're talking about millions of dollars to get these things accomplished. But the return is putting money into, back into our communities and back into our cities. So I think the biggest thing for us, if somebody were to ask me, and Mr. Davis didn't, so if somebody were, I told him I was going to do this. I said, if somebody were to ask me what the next steps was, it would be recreation has to become a priority when we set our budgets. We've got to make it at the top of the list. We've got to understand the impact that it has on our cities and on our county. We've got to identify the funding sources pull from, and I know that they've got some things they're talking about from the county level and how to do it, and then we gotta have a plan of attack. So, for us, things are going really, really good, operationally, but, look at the future, it scares me to death because of how many people are coming in addition of our assets. And I know you guys are in a lot of the same boats, either the condition of your assets or the capacity of your assets. But you're busting at the seams just like we are, so. I appreciate Mr. Davis putting this together, and I know that they've got a lot of things to consider, both on the city and on the county end. So if there's questions specifically about the county, that was a very quick overview of kind of where we are, some of the data that we deal with. But I'm excited about trying to address this to determine both capacity-wise and conditional-wise, how can we increase it?
I think one of the number one goals that we take from this is, as we, and I'm sure a lot of y'all have been getting questions and discussion from your cities and from your areas about, what is this recreation task force and what is it doing? And I think the number one thing that we have to continue to state is, this is not a combination of we're putting all recreation together in one entity. I've got that from 5 or 6 different people, and I'm like, no, we're actually all in here working together trying to come to a solution. And as I discussed, countywide recreation is off my radar. And I think we got to continue to share that out there, that, recreation is important, and we can all continue to do it because it is important to every single one of our cities and our citizens in there. As spread out as a county that we are, if we have a single complex and a single place for recreation, I think it would be probably one of the worst mistakes that we could make, because it takes the citizens out of the city. I want to see more people come into the cities. One of the things that John brought up that I'm still sitting here, and after Phil's, what Phil shared, keeping track of these things, not only are y'all presenting a budget to us so we can actually see what your costs are, but keeping track of it, as you stated, and that you had that tournament, and during that tournament it brought, so much money into your city. Those are the things that you see when, if we decide to fund any type of recreation, it's not a loss. Whether it's 500,000 or whether it's $1 million, or whether it's, recreation is not a loss. It's not, I'm throwing $1 million out and I'm getting nothing back. And that's what we have to show when we see these numbers. When we spend those ATAX money on different avenues, and somebody says, well, why are y'all spending $20,000 on this and $5,000 on this or $30,000 on this, or why are you, putting trash cans in? What does that do for the area? What you see is the uptick of an area because of that money and how it was spent. And that's the things that I want to make sure that each of y'all are keeping and reporting on in some way, shape, or form, whether you can do it very easily through coupons through tournaments or something, to make people understand that when they come into your town for an area, they're eating out. I know from, it's very simple to state that, hey, I know we had a big thing on Thursday night. Well, you can probably go in there, and I believe you can pull up your hospitality tax, if I'm not mistaken, in each of your cities per night. Is that, Brett, is that able to do that, to see,
Pull it by month.
you can pull it by month? So you could have a ability to understand, like during the month of recreation, and whether it's soccer or baseball, whatever, you could have an idea what those things are. Very important to show the impact that it's just more than just us spending money out there. The same way on facilities, so that would be one of the goals that I'd like you to try to figure out is how do you keep track of that more? So a little bit from y'all's standpoint of it, there's not a countywide hospitality tax, so you don't have anything to keep track of on there. So you get an A on that one. But from a city standpoint, I think it's important to kind of present that, to show that, the more of this comes in, the more growth that you're going to see, not only in your cities, but also in your county as well. The other one I want you to look at is, facility upgrades. What is it costing for you to maintain your current facilities? What is the need of your current facilities, that you have? What do you have to do to your facilities, but the inability to afford to do that? It can be roofing and different things like that. What are those costs? And another one is what your future facilities, and this kind of comes into you as a city, or you as Fair Play Oakway, looking at what a 5-year plan for your recreation program would be. Under the current assumption of where you're headed at with right now, with zero funding, what does your program look like? Okay, and then I want you to sit back and think about, what does our program look like if it is funded? What does it do not only for our recreation group, what does it do for our city from a tourism area, and what is your goal for Walhalla? What's your goal for for Westminster? Where do you see that going? And that's probably something that y'all need to sit down and look at to understand, from a complex scenario, what is that complex? What does it do for our city more than just recreation? What is it going to be used for? Things like that. So it's a clear understanding of what direction you're trying to take your area. And from Salem's perspective, you're on the little smaller side of some things. So where do you see your plan going with Salem? Do y'all, is it something that you want to continue as it is, or is it something that you want to work a little bit more closely with Walhalla? Just thinking from a 5-year standpoint of where do y'all want to take Salem, I think is a very important avenue of it, and that's kind of why we're all sitting here at the table, because I feel like under the current assumptions of how recreation is going in here, the 5-year plan is very scary to me on that I think that it's the way the funding is and the way things are coming down the pipeline. I'm afraid that there may not be a lot of recreation in 5 years. The cost of it is rising, and from a dollar figure, your infrastructure that we discussed, that's where you have to put your money in the infrastructure. If you don't put your money in the infrastructure, you're not going to have a city. You're not going to have, the lights aren't going to stay on. Or the smallest squirrel in the world is going to turn them off every 5 minutes. And that's the struggles that you have in your cities. And that's the one thing from talking about on the funding side of things is if we put $100,000 in each of the cities, it's actually more like $200,000 by the time it comes in on your taxes and everything like that. When you host a tournament, if we hosted a state tournament up here, under the current assumptions of what we have, we don't have the ability to host a state tournament up here, which is, I guess, why we've never been able to do that. We don't have the facilities to do that. But the impact of that is huge. And not only when we start funding these things, the cost associated with them for our own citizens goes down because of the amount of money that we are continuing to bring in here. And that's another important thing that I kind of wanted to bring in. And this kind of brings, and I haven't given y'all a lot of chance to talk, Sheriff Crenshaw and Mr. Moley, Corporal Moley, but the avenue of recreation that everybody talks about, or they forget to talk about, I should say it that way, comes down to keeping kids involved in the area and keeping the kids in here. And, the way that we spend money towards, regulating these kids when they're 13, 14, 15. We had a quick discussion a little bit about the juvenile crime that you see on here, which is happening in our cities on there, which are 12, 13, and 14-year-olds is what I'm seeing. Can you speak just a little bit on that juvenile crime and where you kind of see that trending and how, from a recreation standpoint, we can assist with that?
parents are paying restitution.
They'll,
So yeah, it plays a huge role. I mean, what you're talking about is, I think that's the wrong approach. You know, we've got to, right here in all, in fair play and host a state volleyball tournament, the structure you've got, and what, to be able to host a state baseball tournament in Seneca, or a state softball tournament in Ohio, or wherever, bring those folks in. Law enforcement standpoint, obviously, you know, large security risks that we won't need to present. Yeah, I mean, education, directly impact our budget.
So a good thing, I was gonna say, so a report on that would help to kind of show where we're at on that, cause, you know, it's a kind of an unfair assumption to always say that crime is increasing in Oconee, because I tell people, I said, well, we also have more officers, you know, on the streets than we've ever had. So to say that, you know, the crime has always been there, that we're doing a better job at, you know, stopping the crime while it's occurring or after it occurs, finding the individual that caused it. So, you know, the biggest alarming thing that I have seen is the age that somebody enters into crime has been my biggest problem that I see, is because it's like once they start, it's just like an addiction, or the same way with the drugs that we're faced into there. And I've seen that starting in that 10 and 11 age, which is absolutely mind blowing that it's starting that early, but I know it's not as bad as what I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, but I mean, it just, you know, if you're starting that young, the hope dwindles so much in that, so, yes, ma'am.
On hosting tournaments, I think Oconee County as a whole probably could host tournament, but it would take the cooperation of all the rec departments and use every facility and bring everybody in to each major city, which I think somebody would just have to take charge of that and promote it. And I think it would be good. And you're talking about the 11, 12, 13. Once you start hosting these things, then everybody, the community, everybody wants to get on board. That happens with the baseball, Red Owen Field and stuff like that. And where is that? Simpsonville, somewhere up in there. I mean, it just brings everybody on board. It's just like winning a state championship. You know, you get the whole community in. And I think if we can start hosting different ones for the entire county, play at our place, play at Seneca, play at Walhalla, maybe after the season or during the summer even, would be a good time. But that's just something to think about in the future.
Please.
John Galbraith, Walhalla. The problem with the state tournaments is they have to be bid on, and you have to present a packet, and you gotta show what's offered and things like that, and then it's voted on, and things like, you know, goes through the process. Also, they don't want it, not saying that we could do it as a county, but they don't want it spread out. They want it in one location where if there's 2 or 3 age groups playing, the parents are there with all 3 age groups of their kids. Softball, for instance, I know we're talking about state tournaments. Sumter hosted basically the same year we did, the state tournament, and they had the 10s, 12s, and 15s at the time, which they've added another age group now to include the 8s. That was just 3 age groups, and they had a report came out after the tournament at the end that it brought like $858,000 into the city of Sumter for that week of that tournament. Hotels, plenty of restaurants, but like here, you know, they go eat, go to the field, play, go eat, go to bed, play. You know, it's a double elimination tournament, so everybody's guaranteed to be there Friday through Sunday. And after that, it kind of drops off, but, I mean, how many districts are there, 8? Talking about one representative from each district coming team. That's a lot of teams, 12 players per team, 3 coaches or 4 per team. So it's a lot of people. It's something, basically what I'm doing now, I'm sending 45 kids, 6 coaches to Orangeburg. Have to stay at least one night. It's a 2-day tournament. Further away, it'd have to be 2 nights, so it'd be double the price of the hotel rooms. Parents are gonna pay for the food, the gas, those drinks. Some parents go to the grocery store and buy snacks. So it has a lot to do with everything besides hospitality tax. I talked about that tournament, but that was just hospitality tax. That didn't include non-prepared food and gas and things like that. So, I mean, you know, the future of tourism is definitely recreation. I speak personally as a parent, because my daughter played travel softball. And back when she was into that, there was nothing for us to drop $200 or $300 a weekend, bills, food, and gas, out of town. That's something that we need to look forward, and if you build complexes, I'm kind of thinking about a soccer complex, because we're so big into soccer, but nobody has that up here. Everybody has to go to Greenville or Spartanburg or down that way to play in those big tournaments, Greer. We don't have that here. Even when we're not using it, have a coordinator that would coordinate travel, or bring people into town, things like that. Another thing with the tournaments is these state tournaments, Seneca's supposed to be hosting 8s, 10s, and 12 girls next year, I think, for softball. Don't quote me on that, but I think the last time was something like $300-something thousand worth of business for the city. I don't think they hosted anything but one age group. So you're talking about a lot of money. Really, it shows probably a loss for the recreation part of it, but as far as the community as a whole in Oconee County, it brings a lot of money into the
One thing I'd like to add to that is everything he's saying, we went through with our kids growing up, but there's one thing that's not being said. When we had these big tournaments, we turned that into our little vacation. We were there for a week sometimes. And we used, wherever we were at, that was where we vacated. And we, like he said, I mean, you go buy food, you're gonna grill out, you either stay in a motel or a campground. You come to Westminster for a big tournament, and you go visit Shaw Ram, you go to Wild Water, you go to Kiowee and rent a boat one day. I mean, those people come in for these ball games, they stay when they've got to spend 3 or 4 days. Whole family. So it brings a lot in.
Yeah, Derek Burnett with Farrell. I think that's kind of from what I, listen to, especially with the cities needing, wanting to keep everything in the cities. These tournaments, obviously, no city has the facilities to hold larger tournaments. And typically they're talking about a lot of these state recreation type tournaments. But I think, as going to what Phil was saying, is the future of Oconee County and the recreation as a whole, bringing in tournaments not only involving just rec, but tournaments involving these travel teams. We can't do that right now at Seneca. We can't do that right now in Westminster or Walhalla. Is it possible to do a travel basketball tournament? For example, I'm involved with Youth Link. They just got started. We went from having 3 teams the first year we did this to last year having like 9 or 10 teams. And this year could be more, depending on how many kids get involved. And we had even discussed, are there enough facilities in our area where we could hold our own tournament And so we could raise money for that organization, because those kids don't pay for anything. I mean, it's a great organization where the kids don't pay for the tournaments, they don't pay for the uniforms. And so we have to raise money to continue that and allow these kids to have that ability to enjoy playing basketball. But we don't have the facilities. And it is hard to coordinate with 3 different rec departments to use their facilities. One, either there's just nothing to say, well, we'll coordinate, or they're being used for their own events. So I think there's the issue I think we have to come into figure it out as a county, is what can we do to not only improve the rec departments, give them facilities to use, but also be able to bring in more money into the county and using those facilities when the rec department's not using them. And I think that's where it's gonna be, to me, that's where the difficulty is how do you do that and not just give Westminster, and I don't see Westminster saying, hey, I want Seneca to put a big basketball arena with 10 gyms, 10 courts, so that Seneca can benefit from it. I think that's where the difficulty is gonna lie, but ultimately, that type of being able to have those facilities to bring them in, whether we can coordinate it like what we're talking about, or have in one spot, I don't know what the answer is, but that's where I think the growth could be for Oconee County, because obviously they are bringing in people for other tournaments, fishing and outdoor. People would like to come vacation here, so it's kind of what you said. If you have a big AAU basketball tournament in the county, these people may come and stay for more than 3 or 4 days.
And that's usually during the summer.
And that's in the summer, so, it is possible to have
And
these
it's
type of events.
never played at one spot. I mean, we
Yeah,
took
most
the
of
team
the-
to Utah and we went everywhere.
I mean, I can, just from my experience with it for the last few years and coaching, we went down to Myrtle Beach and did, they do the national NTBA basketball tournament, and they do 2 different sessions, middle school and high school. And we never played in one place. I mean, they were using high schools, rec department gyms,
Middle school.
schools, churches. I mean, it was all over the place, from North Myrtle Beach all the way down into.
Great vacation.
But people weren't going for just a couple days. And so I agree. I don't necessarily think we have to have one specifically large facility to do everything if we can coordinate it all and work together, so.
Charles Moore with Oconee County Sheriff's Office. To piggyback off of what Derek said, both of us coach those AAU travel teams for the summer. Now, they use churches, middle schools, high school gyms. Maybe looking going forward next summer, tap into some of that. Towns, because most of the tournaments my teams played in were over at Greenville in that area. We didn't, I didn't take my kids to nationals because I had 2 or 3 kids on the team that I afforded, and I couldn't afford to pay for. Out of town, I had 1 or 2 on my team that I fed. I had 1 or 2 on my team that I fed, but they're kids. I was gonna make sure they ate. So maybe we have to do that in our county. If this county has things to offer, tourism-wise, to get people in this county, we just have to exploit it and show it to them. But I'm pretty sure most churches are not gonna charge us arm and leg.
Yeah.
Maybe use a church so we can host the AAU tournament here. And I think, I can't speak for one of the 2 guys that pretty much run it, but I think they'd be open-minded to it.
Yeah, and reasonably speaking, if the facilities are there, I mean, you could hold a tournament for basketball every
We
weekend,
sure could.
from May through the end of June, and easily does it every weekend. And they use the Red Owens, and they do it every weekend. There's a group that uses that gym, and I couldn't imagine how much money they're bringing in. And they only have what, I think 4 courts, 3 courts,
Something like that.
and they usually just do it in one location.
And you talking tons of teams, even from whenever my team played, like I said, it'd be myself, my wife, my 2 kids, plus 1 or 2 players that I was feeding. So you're talking about $200. So I spread mine out. I was smart. I might play one at the beginning of the month and another one at the end of the month, because I hit it off the way I got paid. But you're talking about one person spending maybe $200. That's gas or food, and then you're talking about other people on the team, players, parents, other teams. So we're talking big revenue.
Yeah, and I think the goal for the county, I think, to me, it's an ultimate goal, is if we're all working together and see, okay, yeah, it's gonna require a little bit here for me to make sure I have somebody there, help us get refs. Those things can happen, and once you see the benefit, the county sees benefit, then maybe future we can see other things take place with facilities, so.
Well, in multiple facilities is, I think, the best avenue when you do it in here. Building one mega facility, sometimes you struggle with people getting upset at how much traffic's involved in something like this. And most of the ones that I've traveled to, your fields are 5 to 7 miles apart anyway. And so it gives you a little break in between traveling in there, because if you build one huge facility, you have parking issues and you have traffic issues. And what I've noticed is, from the ones that I've been to where there's 3 or 4 different places that you're playing is, it's a little bit more spread out. Your restaurants are a little bit better, because the thing that we all have to remember is, just because somebody's playing in Westminster, it also benefits Seneca Walhalla same way. If they're playing in Walhalla, it always benefits us moving forward. And I think, you know, the club avenue, I don't want to call it new because it's been around for a while, but when I was a kid, I never remember club teams, period. And, you know, the club avenue of it is growing. I mean, we do have some club teams obviously located here in Oconee County, but it's only going to get more and more and more, especially from a recreation. If we struggle in certain age groups to actually form a team, that club will form a team. And having them to have a place is, you know, they provide a very good out for a lot of players. A lot of these clubs also raise money, and they have scholarship players in there. A lot of these kids don't play. I know with my son's team, there's 2 kids that are on scholarship, so it's a very good avenue from there. And it doesn't take away from the rec. I hear a lot of people say, well, club teams take away from a rec, and I'm like, actually, a lot of kids play rec and they play club at the same time. So it's a big avenue moving on there. So what I'll do is I'll send an email out talking about the different goals for the next meeting, and you know, thinking about that 5-year plan on where you're headed under the current circumstances that you're at. You know, looking through your budget and where do you want to take your recreation group from there on that 5-year plan, and what can we do to move it forward on there. You know, the things that I see is our areas continually working together, because I know there was a time that I felt like a lot of our recreation programs weren't working together, and you know, in the last 3 to 4 years, I think it's gotten better than it ever has been. I don't know why there was a lot of separation there for a while, but it was kind of, you know, I really felt like when you went into Westminster, you were hated, or when you went into Walhalla, you were hated. And now it's kind of like, you know, you see people sitting on the sidelines, you know, together. You see people sitting in the stands together. And
I think that club has helped in that, because some of these kids are playing club together, even though they play in different regs.
Yeah, and it's taken some of the separation out of the county that I think was really, really high in here. And it was, you know, sometimes it was like when Walhalla would get something, Westminster would be mad, or when Seneca got something, everybody was mad. And so, and I think that's changed, because you see that if you have the ability to draw in, you know, a tournament such as, you know, what we're kind of talking about is, and I know all of our areas would have to get, you know, certified. That's the other thing. You can't just say, hey, you know, we got fields in the back, and you bring them in. All the fields have to be certified under some specific thing and graded to kind of show where that is. So they don't have to be the nicest, and that's been proven by several of the places I've been. I have no idea how in the world they got this tournament here, because it was some of the worst fields that I've ever seen. And we have some of the best facilities, in my personal opinion, that I've ever seen right here in Oconee County. And it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to get there. But, you know, if I tell y'all, okay, y'all host a tournament, that's a negative in your budget across the board on there. There's no way that y'all can go in here and say, okay, it's going to cost y'all $20,000, it's going to cost y'all $20,000, and it's going to cost Seneca $20,000. Y'all go ahead and pony that up, and y'all host the tournament. Congratulations. That's what, you know. But the actual aspect of doing that, if you pull in, you know, 5,000 to 6,000 people in the area, which is possible with a lot of these tournaments, you know, the cost benefit is hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've seen on there. But, you know, we're relying on y'all to do the job through recreation, and y'all have done a good job. But I just feel like under the circumstances of where we're headed on a budgeting standpoint across the state, it's just not a pretty picture. And it's just one of those things that, You know, do I keep the lights on, or do I keep recreation going? Do I keep fire protection, or do I keep recreation? And that's the things and the choices that y'all are having to make and your city councils are having to make. That ain't fun. You know, from y'all standpoint, you don't have a city council, but you look at it and say, hey, here's our budget. This is what we can do. We can't do any more with our budget. Salem, same way. I mean, you have city council, but, you know, you have to look at these things and you're making these cuts. And, you know, if you make these cuts, if, you know, Westminster, if you make cuts, they go to Seneca. Walhalla, if y'all make cuts, they go to Seneca. What's it do to Seneca? It doesn't help them financially. It actually hurts. So we're all in this together, which is, you know, what we need to understand. So the next meeting I have is December 19th. Number one thing, make sure we get that budget and those things in there so we can kind of get that out and understand, because I know a lot of the council is interested to see what y'all's cost of that is. You know, we've got, you know, some stuff from Westminster and they couldn't believe, they're like, how are they paying for that? Yes, sir.
I have a question regarding what we actually spend or what it really takes,
What
or both.
What's budgeted or what we actually spend.
No, what we actually need to do it in the condition we need to do it in.
Okay.
Or what we actually spend.
Your current would be what you're spending. What you need would kind of be in that 5-year plan of what your facility upgrades, facility needs. If y'all got to re-roof the gym, that's
So you're talking about capital side, not necessarily operations side.
right. Yeah. You know, there was two things. So like your budget per year is this. I draw in this many people on this, this is the money I get on this side of things. You know, that's kind of on there. What you need is kind of, you know, that future facility upgrades and maintain and everything like that, because, you know, let's just say the roof of your gym fell in tomorrow, what would you do? You know, those are the things to sit back and think about, because that stuff happens. I mean, some of these older gyms, there's been two in South Carolina that I've seen that they just had to finally shut down. And, you know, those kids go somewhere else. They don't stop playing basketball. I mean, you know, a lot of people think, well, okay, you know, when, you know, an area stops doing recreation, the kids are still there. I mean, so, those are the things to really consider on there, because, you know, we have aging facilities. We have aging infrastructure. We have, you know, some of the facilities, you know, that's the same wood I played on at Walhalla.
Yeah,
It's the same wood a lot of the people that are a lot older than me played on in Walhalla, obviously.
yeah, and I think the budget's, you know, unfairly, like with us, it's not gonna be anywhere near like cities. We don't have any payroll. So, I mean, our budget's gonna be pretty break even compared to some of these cities. But we struggle on the opposite end, because we don't have the payroll to get more people in and have it run as smoothly as it probably could, so.
And if you have any questions on that, Brent, I think the best thing to do is probably pick up the phone and call Scott, because he'll kind of walk you through that. And I invite all of y'all, if y'all hadn't reached out to Mr. Mulder, to, you know, talk with him to make sure this budget's on a clear, you know, the first one we ever got was a meeting I was at with Mayor Ramey, where he kind of brought up to say, hey, you know, we can't take this on. If we take this on, it's a net negative to us and it'll absolutely kill us. Well, I never really, in all honesty, thought about that. It was actually in regards to, you know, the Fair Oak Gym, because we worried about from y'all's cost perspective where y'all would be. And so I said, well, Herb, you know, you want another gym? Herb jumped. Yeah, of course I want another gym. But it's a negative. I mean, it's not, you know, you can't just take a gym on and it be free. It's the same way on y'all. So there was cost associated with that y'all had to adjust to do on there. But that's a clear understanding for all 5 of us up here to understand what y'all are going through. So when we make a decision, we have a clear understanding of the costs associated with that, how to build the facilities, and what the actual outcome of it is. And multi-use facilities, that's the other thing. If y'all got a facility, what's other stuff? You know, we're not just talking about baseball. We're talking about facilities that can be used for all kinds of stuff. And if you've, you know, been around the state in the last 2 or 3 years, you've seen multi-use facilities that's, you know, it may be a baseball field, or it may be you bringing in boats right here. You know, you know, if it's a lot of these new gyms have drive-throughs that come all the way through them. You know, I didn't know that you could drive cars on hardwood floors, but I was at a place the other day and they had a car show indoor on hardwood floors. It absolutely blew my mind. You know, it's come a long way from, you know, obviously parking in an old gym floor. You don't, you wouldn't do that in Walhalla, I don't think. But, appreciate all y'all being here. We try to make these meetings quick to get stuff accomplished on there. Yes, sir, please.
You know, we're talking about models, way to do things and stuff like that. I hate to keep harping on Sumter, but the first place I ever went that I was really impressed with how they did it and how it came about was, Sumter County, city of Sumter. Sumter County actually did a penny for progress, tax as they did for the recreation. And they built the facilities for the city of Sumter, which is listed on the county, but it's right beside the city. That's where they host a lot of their stuff. If you get a chance, go online and look at their recreation, their baseball complex and their soccer complex that they built with that penny for progress. There's nobody in the state that can touch either one of them, in my opinion. But, that was I was very impressed with both of those.
Yeah, and they don't have enough hotels.
Yeah, they don't. And that's the thing, you know, oftentimes it takes, you know, when you build a facility like that, it takes a little bit for the hotels to catch up to it. You know, even in, you know, James Island, you have to stay, you know, outside on the Charleston area, and you're staying 15, 20 minutes away from the, you know, facility. Something very similar to that. You're 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes away, depending on, you know, what your cost associated with that is. And there are multiple ways of funding these complexes. I mean, you know, that's the other thing that somebody said, well, you know, well, all they need to do, you know, Wallen needs a new gym. And I said, well, that's great. I said, go in there and tell them to build it. You know, where does the money come from? So, you know, there's a lot of funding avenues that a lot of people do when people say, well, you know, how do they have this? How does Sumter have this? This is Sumter. You know, how do they have this? And I said, well, you know, you just answer that question. And those are the avenues that we have to look at and we have to discuss with our citizens, with our parents, if that's an avenue that everybody would like to go. Because oftentimes it seems like that is the only way to fund these complexes. But that puts us behind. There is 3 counties that don't have that. We are one of those 3. Beaufort, Greenville, and Oconee are the last 3, as you saw Spartanburg had there. So.
Just recently.
Yep.
And keep in mind, what you just said about the lodges, that's one reason we don't need to forget Phil and what he does. I mean, these parks need to be big enough and running year-round so that we can offer the lodges. But right now, Westminster campground's shut down.
Yep.
The other campgrounds in other areas, but ours is shut down. We don't have any lodging. We did have a tournament. But he's staying Sunday. So he needs, his department, you know, they need something there as well, so it's a big project.
So, what I'd like to have is after we finish our December 19th meeting, we would make some kind of recommendation to county council from this committee, in the January meeting is what my goal is, which is why it's very important to get the budget and, you know, talk to Mr. Mulder, make sure you understand what he's wanting on there, because that would be my hope that we could make some kind of clear picture on, hey, here's what recreation is, and here's, you know, where we feel that we should go, and understanding from, you know, the standpoint of where your cities are trying to take recreation on there, as well from your elected officials. And I encourage, you know, each of you, some of you are elected officials like myself, but talk to your representatives in your cities that are over that, you know, for them to truly understand what this is and what this means and how, you know, encourage, you know, I want to see a lot more cities working with the county. You know, city council, county councils, we need to do a better job at being together. And, you know, it starts right here at this table. You know, I see, you know, I talk to a lot of city councils across, not just in Westminster, but, you know, Walhalla as well. And I'm like, you know, talk to us a little bit more so we know, Brent, I appreciate, your work in talking to, Mr. Moeller already, just to have a general idea, because we gotta get on the same page, especially with this. I mean, we wanna make this successful, and it's not throwing money at y'all saying, hey, here, y'all keep going forward. That's not gonna do anything. It's a clear, precise plan on where we're trying to take this, and that's the goal of all of this, which is why we're trying to get all this budget, and everything together on this. It's very easy to say, hey, let's build complexes and then we'll figure it out from there. But I've seen time and time again where counties have done that, and they don't have the money to run the complexes after that. And they had a very poor recreation program, and those complexes are just, kind of hanging out. I mean, they still play in them, but they're not near what you see in Sumter. They had a clear plan in Sumter on what I wanted to do, to get these tournaments in here. Red Owens, man, that place is booming, busy all the time. I don't think Anderson Civic Center's busy enough. I mean, those fields are empty half the time. That's what I don't want to see. If we're going to do something, it's going to do something to get people outside and back on there. Like I lived on the recreation. It was gym. We're out there on the fields at Sir Thomas. So, but appreciate all y'all being out here. Anybody have anything else to add? Get a motion to adjourn.